I now request our director to present floral bouquet to RSC Chairman Professor L.S. Chamayal, who is gracing today's event, and Dr. Anju to assist, please. And a floral bouquet to Speaker of the Day, Dr. Naveen Jual. And Dr. Anju to assist, please. And a floral. I now request our director, Dr. Vandana Prasad, to share her views with the audience on this auspicious occasion and to provide audience with some information on the lecture series and professional life of late Dr. M.N. Bose.
Good morning, everyone. So today we have a pleasure to have our Chairman, Research Advisory Committee, Professor L.S. Sharma, and RSC members. Many of them are physically here, and some of them are present as online. I welcome you all. Dr. M.N. Bose was one of the founding paleobotanists of our country. His contribution in visible paleobiology is extremely significant. Not only in India, he has contributed in paleobotanical studies in other parts of the world, like Africa, Australia, and many more areas. He was one of the first Indian paleobotanists who has worked in Arctic area, and he spent months in Arctic area doing his field work. Apart from research, he was very meticulous, and he was a great art lover. During his tenure in BSIT as director, several new disciplines emerged, like dendrochronology and archaeobotany. His contribution to BSIT is enormous. In his memory today, we are going to have a talk by Dr. Naveen Jual, who has done significant work in quaternary. He is scientist with a lot of passion for his research. He has contributed immensely in the areas of reflexology, geomorphology, thermogenesis, dating of Gujarat and Himalayan quaternary. After the triple animation, Dr. Jual is utilizing his scientific experience to solve environmental issues, and today he is going to talk on climate change and its effect on Himalayan glaciers. I welcome you, sir, and we are very happy that you accepted our invitation today to deliver 7th Memorial M.N. Bose Memorial Lecture today. Thank you.
Thank you for BSIT and share my little bit of experience of my work, particularly pertaining to the glaciers in the Himalaya. Before I start my talk, I would like to express my condolence to two great scientists, Professor Valia and Professor R.D. Singh. He is my young colleague, Dr. Vijay Bhatt from MSc, the great law class. Okay, so without wasting time, let me get back to my presentation. Height, height. So the talk which I plan to really, not talk, I think share my little bit of experience. I have divided into two parts. What is the glacier response to climate change? Quite debatable subject. And second, the 7th February 2021 flood in Uganda. Much debated, discussed story. This cute boy was in a place called Lamba near Brazil in the month of winter. And look at the boy, he is trying to protect the glacier by putting the ice in his hand. It was a very good picture which I liked immensely. Now coming back to the story, normally if everything would have gone all right, then probably we must have been entering to this phase now, because this is a cycle which goes from warm climate to the cold climate. So we should have been entering into the cold climate if everything would have been normal. But things are not normal. That's what is the worry now. Why they are not normal, we all know that because of the anthropogenic activity, particularly the greenhouse gases are creating havoc. And really the glaciers are responding to this particular warming. And if they are responding, what is the mechanism for their responses? That is what is the million-dollar question which we don't know. So if everything would have been perfectly all right, then the things would have been different. The citrus would have been having extended winter. Ice should have been there in the citrus. And further, if you see, this was in Mana area when we were working. Sheep, normally at 4,200 meters when I was working there, she is not alive, she is dead. So the freezing cold would have created this kind of situation if we are not having the proper measures to protect us. So that would have been a really cold scenario. But as we move, then what is happening? What is making this climate to really change? So there are other variety of parameters, but one of the things which is that the carbon dioxide that everybody knows about it. And the great guy, Charles David Killing, and this is also called a Killing curve. This gentleman started measuring in Mauna Loa CO2 from 1958, and he kept on measuring till he died in 2005. This is a great curve. Against the carbon dioxide, if you see the plot of the temperature, you see a really alarming situation. After 1980 or so, we are getting quite an alarming rise. And today, on January 2021, the CO2 is 450 ppm. So this is really a very alarming situation. Everybody is worried about it. And majority of the people who work in the glaciers in the Himalayas in the recent times, they implicate the CO2. Of course, along with that, they also talk about the black carbon contributions. Now, people are really worrying, and they're really working at a very cutting edge. This paper appeared in 2012 by this gentleman in Nature Geoscience. He says that unless we bring down CO2 concentration to this level, which is the pre-industrial value, next glacial stage would be a distant dream. This is what he said. Now, we know that the carbon dioxide residence time in the atmosphere is quite large. So he suggested that if we stop pumping CO2 as of today, then it will take something like 1,500 years to come back to this particular event. Can we do that? And that's a fight going on all over the globe. Some people are saying we're going to cut down the market and then we're going to cut back. Which way that is going to work? Now, if you see the recent paper, this is 86 I was talking about this particular paper, which has appeared just recently, I think a week ago, in Nature Geoscience. This is another serious problem which we are going to face now. The AMOC over the last 1,000 years has been as big as in the last 1,000 years, in the last 10 years. It's so much. It's going to have a very cascading effect on storm, heat waves, and sea level rise because of the bulking of the water towards the northern Atlantic. So this is one problem. In our part of the subcontinent, we know this AMOC and INSO are a kind of a tropical system, which is really going to make our monsoon prediction quite unpredictable. some of the areas are going to have a very high rainfall, some of the areas are going to have a low rainfall. So our predictability will be very impacted. So these are some of the signs which are coming up that indeed the climate change has really made its presence felt by on the planet Earth. Now, one of the most simple archives that respond very sensitively to the climate change are the glaciers. In fact, they are called the thermometers. You increase the temperature, they melt away. You decrease the temperature, of course, they expand. Of course, there is a component of water involved. So this gentleman, Morten Kasser, in American Science in 2007, that time the controversy started about when glaciers are going to go away. I will come to that. The shrinking glaciers during the last century are an iconic image of global climate change and present stunning evidence of how climate change affects the planet Earth. It's horrifying. If you go to the areas which were once glaciated, you really get a horror feeling that are they really retreating at an alarming rate? Of course, the manifestations are varied and the conceptions are also varied, no doubt about it. But they are being reflected in the geomorphology of the area of the glaciated terrain. For example, when I was working in 2009 in Kailash area, for the reconstruct the history of glaciation, I was really alarmed. I have never seen this kind of horrifying picture of decaying the glacier. This is a Kailash, and if you go to Nandi from this particular point, when I went to look into the eastern side, what I found is this. You can see the Sherpa here standing and taking a photograph. The entire valley is vacated. And more so, I have never seen work striking over 20 years in the Himalayan region on the glaciers. I have never seen a bedrock of the glacier. It's been glaciers are really getting the glaciers are really now coming back to that part, the last area. So this is Khardula, and this is the Puche Glacier, the lifeline of lake. Now, if you look at the glacier, it is a simple patch of the ice which is now hanging at an altitude of 20,000 feet or so. Then, what we are doing, apart from the CO2, which I showed you, that is really taking a very alarming state. People in the Himalaya nowadays, they have developed a method to melt the ice. And this is a picture when I was working in a place called Kosa Glacier near Malari. This is a fire, this is not a volcano, this is a fire set up by the people of that particular area. Why they do it? Because they look for a kind of a herb, which they call Kirajari. I show the picture. And that particular herb is nothing but a fungus. And it only comes out when the snow melts. And if they find that in the month of May, snow is not melting, then they do go to the higher altitude and burn the grasses, since they know the matter. And this black carbon sits on top of this particular white snow, it starts melting out. It's a very alarming situation. This is that particular herb I'm talking about. One herb fetches them 2,000 rupees. So everybody in the beginning of the summer, in the month of May, they will go all out in the high mountain to face this particular thing. So this is another threat which is being created to the Himalayan glacier. Now, what I did, I just took the data. This is not a very long series data. 2005 by the GSI. They have made a measurement of the glacier depletion of the various glaciers. But what is interesting here is that majority of the retreat is below 20 meters per year. How serious it is, how significant it is, what is the scientific sensitivity of this particular incision rate, that is yet to be really ascertained. But important paper which came in 2012 was the state and state of Himalayan glaciers. This brings out a very interesting story. You see, all the glaciers from Eastern Himalaya, Central Himalaya, and part of the Western Himalaya, they are all showing are decision trade. They're just receding. This is a cumulative change in the length. You can see they're all going down. But when you come to the Karakoram area, you see very interesting phenomena that you see they are flattening out. They are not really receding the way other places are receding. So this is called the Karakoram anomaly that everybody knows. Why it is happening? There are various hypotheses for that. Some people talk about because these are the surging glaciers, they're surged, that's why their snout is extending. Some talks about the westerly is getting more enhanced in this particular area, they are feeding more moisture to it. So we don't know the answer. That's why we called it Karakoram anomaly. So this is really an anomaly, but other places if you see, they are all showing a recedal trend. Now, when we were working there, so this is a sort of a Siachen glacier, and indeed our data, which also shows that we published in 2013, that the 500-year moraine is sitting here. This 500-year moraine, which is sitting here, is just close to the snout. And this 500 years is nothing but the little ice age thing. So that means it has not really gone back much backward since the little ice age. So this is really an anomaly for us at the moment to understand why this is happening in this area. Now then another paper comes from the same area. Again, this comes the same paper by Brosnan, again quoting it. He says that the poor understanding of the process, diversity of climatic conditions, and the extremes of topographical relief makes future projections speculative. We cannot even say with confidence what really is happening to that. The stability or mass gain by the glacier in the Karakoram, this is what is happening, they have also observed. But then another paper comes, that is the 2000, if I remember, 2011 paper, it comes from this 2012 paper, slight mass gain by the Karakoram glacier in the early 21st century. Or this paper, which comes in Nature Geoscience in 2011 by Seller, he says that more than 65% glaciers in the monsoon-dominated Himalaya are retreating, whereas greater than 50% glaciers in the western dominated northern Himalaya are stable or advancing. So this is what I'm trying to give you a picture of what really is happening in the Himalaya. It's not a story all gloomy. There are some many pockets which are going some sign of heaviness. Then comes the great thing, IPCC 2007. Now, IPCC 2007 started from that particular fact that the very important thing came that Himalayan glaciers are receding faster than in any other part of the world. And if the present rate continues, the likelihood of them disappearing by 2035 and perhaps sooner is very high if the Earth keeps warming at the current rate. This statement was original source was Professor Hasnain. In 1999, he made a presentation in Center for Science and Environment, Delhi. And that was published in Down to Earth. Now this was picked up by the World Wide Fund, and they published the same thing in an overview of the glacier retreat and subsequent impact on Nepal, India, and China. This is what they said. And this set the ball rolling. In the country, in India, it was a panic. Prime Minister Principal Scientific Advisor, Sridharman was there at that time. He called an emergency meeting. I was one of the parties to that. Rukani was also there. They said at that time, we must do something for the Himalayan glaciers. Let us bring out, and then we discussed with them. We said that we don't have the data. We have got one or two glaciers which are being monitored either by WADIA or by the GSI. But others, we don't have the data. So how do we know what is happening to the Himalayan glaciers? So before we have the long-term data, we cannot do anything. So in that particular meeting, it was decided that we should have 10 benchmark glaciers in the Himalaya. We should monitor them for at least a decade. Then we may be able to come to a conclusion what really is happening to the Himalayan glacier. With this statement of 2030, by disappearing the glaciers by 2035, it was an hoax. It was really an hoax by any stretch of imagination, and this actually 2035 disappearance comes from the very fact that comes from one location, that is the Gangotri Glacier, and that work was published in Current Science, and that story was built upon that. I'm trying to tell you there's a really this kind of sensitive issues where science really creates a kind of euphoria in the society. Scientists should be extremely careful when they make a statement. And secondly, I must tell it to the media. They must understand and they must know how to differentiate between a scientific statement and a statement of a scientist. A scientific statement is a statement when you publish something in a peer-reviewed journal and then go to the media and say, this is what is my finding. And statement of a scientist, Naveen Jwal is working in the Himalaya, and here you bring a mic in front of his face and say, speak something, and I speak something. And that creates this kind of blunders. What are the repercussions of this study? You see, I'll come to that. Now, this is 1882 picture of the Gangotri Glacier, and roughly I have marked this now position here. Then I went there in 2017, and this is the snout position, and I put a marker here. Just to tune your eye, the blue line is a ridge, which is a reference point for you to say how far the snout has gone backward. You see that particular ridge line is here now. Snout has definitely gone backward. Is this really a recession, or is it a temporary solving of the ice due to the breaking of the frontal area? We do not know that. But this glacier, which is very important for Indians for a variety of reasons, including our faith and belief, we should be really careful when we are making any statement from this particular glacier person. Now, this is really a slap on our face. Gangotri Glacier snout, Wagla in Science writes, brings this picture. Now, these are two pictures, 2004 and 2008. What have we done? How we are monitoring the glacier? These are three stones. You can see the arrow. They are the marker stones. In 2004, they have put a paint on it. Now they go in 2008. As with respect to the snout, they said they have been moved. How do we know the glacier has moved backward or the boulders have moved forward? We don't know that. Therefore, and second thing, we made a lot of statements in our media and things like that. Again, the booklet in Science 2010 writes, the erroneous estimates could have been avoided had the norms of scientific publication, including peer review and concentration upon peer reviewed work, has been respected. That is one of the slap they put on our face, saying that this is what the halla we made on the Himalaya. Maybe we are right, we are not saying we are wrong, but the way we approach the problem was not very scientifically tuned. I have an example. I was working in Siachen, worked there for 3 years. I went there in 2010. You can see our Jawans are doing the exercise on the face of a ice wall. 2010. I went there again in 2012. That particular wall collapsed. You can see that. Then again I went there in 2013. That wall is disappeared. Now, if I have to sensitize it, I will say, my God, enormous ice has gone. Mind you, this is Siachen, which is a surging glacier. This particular ice was a dead ice. It has lost the umbilical cord from the main glacier. So it has to melt. So I cannot build up the story based on this snapshot of 3 years, saying that there is a catastrophic decision of the Siachen going on. That probably must be happening in other parts of the glacier also. They have to be careful about it. Now, then Jairam Ramesh gets into the scene. That time he was the Minister of Environment after that IPCC report, and a lot of halla happened. We don't need to write the obituary for the glacier, but we need to concentrate scientific policy focus on the Himalayan ecosystem, since the truth is incredibly complex. That is what he says. Of course, he is an IITian, so he knows the science. That's why he made a beautiful scientific statement. So I admire that for him. Now, this is what is important. He said us. But then the paper comes in Glaciology 2016, a very good paper in the Gangotri Glacier, in the Journal of Glaciology. But the paper says that glacial land change is a delayed response to climate change, whereas glacial mass balance is a more direct and immediate response. This is what always I used to discuss with Dr. Kulkarni also, that when we talk about the glacial response to climate change, it's not the position of the snout which is climate sensitive, no. It is a suggestion that something is happening to the glacier. The more definite response of the climate, of the glacier to the climate, comes from how the equilibrium altitude, where the mass balance is zero, is responding. Because we know that, roughly speaking, if I take a broad adiabatic glacier of 0.6 degrees centigrade temperature rise, the glacier ELA will go up by 100 meters or so. But there are other factors I'm speaking very crudely. So ELA has to be measured for the Himalayan glacier to arrive at a real definite inference that what is happening to the health of the glacier. Second is the mass balance, which is very difficult to understand. You can't do the mass balance going to the glacier, putting the stakes and making the measurement. But then To conclude about the glacier response to climate change, important is the glacier mass balance study and not the glacier extent. This has come. So this is what we should be doing. I'm just addressing because Director Madam has told me that young students are also watching this particular presentation. It is for them. Really, we want to do it, then we should do this. And this requires real guts and real commitment, real guts to do it. And this will going to bring the good science out of it. Why we cannot write a paper like this from Simhanguti Glacier? There's a lot of paper has come in from Simhanguti Glacier. We created confusion rather than solving the problem. And I'm making this statement with a lot of sincerity. Okay, now bit frightening, of course, if I see all the things which I showed you, if I take them on the face value, some areas of the most populated region on the earth are likely to run out of water during the dry season. This is what is one of the threats if the glaciers are going to go away, the way the things are happening, the climate is behaving. If the current warming and the glacial melting trends continue for several more decades, there is a valid paper in Nature. It's a very interesting paper, it's a review paper. One must read this paper. Now, this is what is very interesting work which appeared in 2010. Climate change will affect the Asian Tower. This is what they said, and this emerging. They said that, because I'm not very comfortable with the mathematics, so pardon for that. But the interesting thing is that this is normalized normalized melt index of the glacier, and that is a normalized melt index of the snow. The glaciers, when I say, I'm talking about ice, and there is snow. Now you see 5 major basins which are draining from the Himalaya are shown here. Okay. Now Indus has got the largest component of the water coming from snow and the ice. Largest component, followed by the Brahmaputra. Ganga has quite a low, Yangtze and Yellows are of a similar magnitude. So this is the major one, followed by the Brahmaputra. What does it imply? It implies that if the glaciers are going to go away, or if they are going to retreat from this particular area, it is going to severely impact the people living in this particular area. Mind you, I must tell you that nearly 1.6 billion people live in these 5 valleys. And Ganga, there is 60 million people there in Ganga. And Ganga is considered to be the most thickly populated area, although the contribution of snow and ice are not that significant. So this is very, 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 very important. Now, if you take the projection for 2065, white means decrease in the mean upstream water supply, and black means the increase in the mean upstream rainfall. As I told you, that the rainfall is going to become very unpredictable. There is one scenario that with the global warming, the rainfall is going to increase because of the Atlantic thermal contrast is going to increase. So they say that there is going to become 8% reduction in the melt from snow and ice from the Indus Basin, but according to that, there is going to be a 25% increase in the precipitation. Similarly, the Ganga will have quite a alarming precipitation, but then there is 8% increase by the precipitation. What does it imply? It implies that, let me put it like this, the upstream discharge, which is high, and downstream, if the upstream discharge is high and downstream food security is coupled in Indus Brahmaputra, that means what? If the upstream discharge gets reduced, the downstream food security of the area is going to get severely impacted. And here I would like to tell you, Indus is the only basin which has got the largest irrigation system in the world. There are 2 dams, Karbala and Mangala dams, which receive majority of the flow from the melt. So this is a very alarming situation for the Indus. Now, see, this is the kind of situation one can emphasize if suppose we lose the ice cap or glacier. This is the Fatula in the area, and see the entire area is quite barren. But a small grassy patch sits over there because they get some trickle of the water. And that if that water also goes away, this settlement will also disappear. What people are thinking about it now, how do we cope up with the problem? One of the problems of the resistance of the glacier is the creation of the lakes. And that is what people talk about the block, glacial lake also phenomenon, which is going to create another disaster in the ocean. There is a country called, where the happiness index is high, Bhutan. Bhutan has got 983 glaciers, and 2794 glacial lakes. These people are so awakened about their glacial lakes that they are making a proactive approach to safeguard them from any eventuality in the future. I just circle it out. There is a sorry. So this is one glacier I want you to focus your attention. So for me, glacier, which you see I put on a circle. There's a glacial lake, blue color here, this one. And this lake, if it reaches, it is going to threaten Thimphu, the capital city. It has happened in the past also. What people are doing there? This is a front picture of that particular lake. This is the lake of that particular glacier. And then, when people realize, local people realize, 15,000 feet high, that particular lake is located. Local people, with some volunteers, they begin to deepen the outlet of the water, so that water starts oozing out. It does not build a unpredictable hydrostatic pressure behind the moraine, so that that leads to kind of a catastrophe downstream. And this is totally based on their own effort, because at this particular elevation, they can't lift the JCB machine. Therefore, people with the shovel and local implements try to deepen the area and try to safeguard. Such a small state with so much of awakening about how to combat the menace of the global warming in terms of glacial disaster. Now, everybody knows the gentleman, Chewang Norfolk. This man retired as a civil engineer from Leh. He's now spending his whole life to create the artificial glacier man. He got the Padma Shri also. So what he's doing, simple thing, he's making a pond, there is an inlet, there is an outlet. He's stopping the water as winter sets in, builds up the ice, and then summer, as the autumn progresses in, it starts oozing out and feeds the crop. So this is the kind of positive approach one needs to have to living with the kind of situation in the Himalaya we are going to face in coming future. Now, based on what I said, I can make intuitive inferences because they are not definite. Indeed, Himalayan glaciers are responding to climate change. However, the existing estimated and thus the climatic inferences can be misleading at times. Unless supported by glacier mass balance, let us than glacier extent length changes. So we will be really going back and forth in a circular argument. Climate projections implicate Indus as one of the most threatened basins. However, positive mass balance and still stand conditions, anomaly is there, but it is poorly understood. We need to really focus more on understanding why it is happening. Needless to say that if the current trend becomes irreversible, which is a question mark, whether it is going to be irreversible or not, the early spring melting basically overwhelms the reservoir storage capacity, thus impacting the food security. This is very, very important. Our dams are designed to store the monsoonal water. And if before the monsoonal water, if the glaciers start melting out, your reservoirs are full. And when you really want the water which is outside the summer monsoon, you will not have a reservoir to do that. So we have been in a dire situation. Are we thinking on those lines? Are we planning on those lines? My answer is certainly no. So with this, I end the first part of my. I have time. Yeah. So this first part I end that it's confusing. No straightforward answers to what is happening to Himalayan glaciers to climate change, but indications are they are indeed showing a trend of this. Second is the Uttarakhand Himalaya. Now, Uttarakhand Himalaya is in a limelight for a couple of years, not because of the good reasons, but certainly because of some factors. One was that 2013, the massive disaster which killed I think more than 25,000 people. Secondly, we have the recent tragedy which happened in February 2021, but prior to that there were two more tragedies, 1894 and 1970. We have not learned any lesson out of that. So this is just to show them that this is the DM of the Himalaya. We have got different lithotectonic units here going up to the distant Himalaya. And mind you, this is the area which we call the southern mountain front that is south of the MCT or within the MCT in the Har Himalaya, which is the most critical zone in the entire Himalaya region. Because of the fact that this is the area which has witnessed multiple events of glacier advances and retreat in the past. This is the area which is not sediment limited, but transport limited. You create a small triggering mechanism by salt burst or any other mechanism, the entire sediment gets mobilized. And then as it comes down to the lower valleys, it creates a cascading catastrophic impact to the built-up structure and the life. Now, there are two prominent monsoon peak if you plot the orography, and if you plot the precipitation, you get one near the MBT and one near the MCT. So these are the areas of focus rainfall. Instability in terms of the slopes, generation of the landslide dam lakes, and eventual breaching are found to be considered in this particular area because of the coupling effect of the ongoing seismicity and the steep ruggedness of the terrain along with the monsoon precipitation. This is just to read you from this transit which I have taken from Rishikesh to Tibet. That is Satluj area. Now, if I talk about the climate extremes, then we can group them into broad categories. One is a very low and very high daily temperature or heavy daily or monthly rainfall amount. Why are we doing this? Because we are debating, discussing, and not able to understand why 7th February 2021 happened. This is probably one of the reasons for this kind of tragedy. And second is more complex events driven extremes, there is drought, flood, hurricanes, etc. do not occur every year. So we are at least not bothered at the moment. We are bothered in the Himalaya on this particular thing because these processes are coupled with the glaciers. The glaciers are showing a very sensitively their responses to the temperature change. Now, I just give you an example, and this is a very important example I want to give. This is Birhi Ganga, a small tributary. This is Birhi Ganga, a small tributary of the Alaknanda river. This is the Birhi Ganga here. 1893, August. This mountain from this particular cliff, which is 9,000 feet, started cascading down in one day. The rocks are dominated by, we call them the calc zone of Chamoli. That means they have contained dolomite, clay, and quartzite. MCT goes very close to this area, so they are highly polarized crumpled and deformed. So this is the kind of wedge failure which came, and this is the landslide which went across the river and launched, 1893. When this happened, and this is a picture of 1894, that particular landslide you can see on the back, taken after the 1894, and this is the lake that was formed and popularly known as the Gona Lake. This lake, when this lake was formed, I'm touching upon an issue when we talk about the recent tragedy of 7th February 2021. In a stretch of 10 kilometer distance, we lost 200 people. In an era of high-tech satellite remote sensing technology and other systems, of not to talk about that, we have got a mobile phone. I was watching those videos, people are calling from one end for the water is coming, and guys are sitting at 10 kilometers downstream, standing on the barrage and working there. Nobody could transmit this message to them. Let's get down, the flood is coming. I'm talking about 2021. When this happened, there was a gentleman called Lieutenant Colonel Fulford. He was a superintending engineer sitting at a place called Vaiwala, which is 300 kilometers from this location. When the villagers from this village, this village called Durmi, villagers from this village walked down to Vaiwala to inform him that a landslide has come, which has really filled our houses with dust, which happens every time, this time also happened. And a lake is forming there. Do something. He sends his engineer, a captain, and with a Munsi. He said, go and see. I have got that report, and I am so impressed by the report. It's published in 1894. By hand calculation, the guy comes here, and he says that this particular blockade, which is 300 meters high, will be filled after 1 year. And their handmade calculation on the discharge. And prediction is so powerful. Then he said that after 1 year, when this is going to get filled, then the water is going to overtop the barrier. Once the water is going to overtop the barrier, there is going to, because the widths are quite large, so part of the top is going to collapse. And when that is going to collapse, it is going to send a severe flood surge downstream. Lieutenant Colonel Fulford told his engineer to put up a line, wireless line from Vaiwala to this village. And they were constantly monitoring it. And He said it will happen in August 1893. It will reach in August 1894. Badrinath Yatra was on the peak, start from May. All the substances, mechanical substances, beaches were removed. Traffic was diverted and white pillars were marked all along the road that asked people not to walk, go look. They all went there. Exactly 1894, another part of the lake beach. And it sends a huge flood surge downstream, devastated a town called Srinagar, which is always burned up, bears the burnt of the disaster. That is the town which you see that, the remnants of the particular downtown of 1894 destruction at Srinagar where the certain industry is located. Not a single person died. Except one sadhu, he refused to get out of the riverbed at Jammu. Devastation happened, but not death. I'm talking about 1894. But then comes another disaster, and this is the lake in 1936. Arnold Hale and Augustine Ganser, when they were writing their book, Central Himalaya. They were sitting at that particular lake and watching the water, eating the trout and other things. The trout was going over there. But then, in 1970, the next flood comes, this is called the Alaknanda flood, one of the huge disasters which people's memories have gone away. When that happens, the lake becomes this. The lake transforms to this particular river now, and this year, in the month of January, the circle which I put here, after 1970, I think 80 years plus, a boat was discovered, and I was curious to go there. I was there on 5th. This is the boat, sorry. This is the boat. It was buried here. After so many years, they got the boat out of this particular place. When this flood happened, 1970, a lot of people died, a lot of buses swept away. Most importantly, the Upper Ganga Canal barrage were opened by the gatekeeper because he was so scared when the flood water was coming. He said, if I don't open the gate will get destroyed. He opened the gate and the Upper Ganga Canal filled with the sediment up to 10 kilometer stretch with a thickness of 6 meters. Western UP was deprived of the irrigation water for 6 months, and the small hydropower project was standstill. And there was a person in the parliament, that time the Minister of the Agriculture was Mr. Rao. It's all on record. We could not predict it. Because of the fact that in this particular area, when we were arguing with the people, scientists I'm talking about, not the bureaucrats, that this could be one of the deforestation in this area could be one of the possible reasons for this devastation. People say now we are talking on rubbish. Himalaya is very dynamic, this happens. But we demonstrated first by documenting the deforestation pattern in this area using satellite remote sensing data, identifying the compartment and comparing it with the working plan. We found that 6,000 hectares of forest was fed in this particular catchment between 1959 to 1969. We saw the connectivity. Again, people told it's a conjecture, it's not definite. Then we wrote another paper with Watson, with the first author. We tried to fingerprint the sediment of a sequence which goes back up to 6,000 years at Srinagar. We find every time the flood was coming, the sediment was coming to the high Himalaya, not deforestation. The moment it comes 1970, it is a lesser Himalaya. And that is the area. So that's having been nailed down that indeed human intervention can create this kind of above, which is unpredictable. So then comes 2013, everybody knows this is a small river called Kiroganga. Before the flood and you see after the flood. Why I'm showing this picture? I'm showing this picture to sensitize the people that when you see a river like this, I was always fascinated to try this valley and I've tried it many times. But it's so beautiful valley, only one village. Nothing. The beautiful is, who will imagine? Who will imagine that one night the entire landscape will change? And this is the curiosity of the nature in this particular area. This devastated a project which is just a kilometer downstream from this Arunda coming, the Kiroganga, just a kilometer downstream, there is a project of 440 megawatt. It looks so beautiful. You can see before the disaster. It looks very beautiful. Nobody can imagine anything that happened in this particular project. But what happens? One day, and the project becomes like this. Now, every time they have to put a bulldozer here to scoop the debris, because they are always coming from behind to get some pool of water to divert it to diversion channel. Sustainability has gone zero. Now, why we are not able to appreciate it? Now, this is one of the pictures of my student, including Nawaz, who is behind. This is Dhauli where the tragedy happened 2021. Now, in the morning when we are crossing the bridge, nobody can imagine it. This is how the plannings are being made, that this river can become so furious. In the night, even when we came back, this was the situation of the river, you see the bridge. So this is just one day story. So this is happening every day. If we don't have the appreciation for this river, which really takes me back to the statement of a person called Professor Jain Bandyopadhyay from Institute of Management, Kolkata. He writes quite a lot on the dams and rivers in the Himalaya. He said we must take into consideration that the Himalayan rivers are not only carrying water and energy, they are carrying enormous amount of sediment, and not sediment not in the form of the Deccan areas rivers or the southern rivers. They are carrying boulders of magnitude, bigger size. And one boulder can create a havoc to all the projects. Now coming back to the last part of this, this is if you see, this is the Nanda Devi Basin. Rishi-Ganga flows from two glaciers for the Pacific, southern Rishi Glacier and the northern Rishi Glacier. This is our Nanda Devi peak here, 7816 meters. This is before Sikkim was annexed to India, not annexed, assimilated into India. This was the highest peak in the country. Now this is the second highest peak. If you look at the glacial distribution in this area, and the devastation happened of two projects. One, the Veni hydropower project, second, the suburban hydropower project. Now, is it first time? I'm not taking you back in time, but I'm taking just a recent time, 2003. Just upstream of that area, a glacial lake just west of Drunagiri Glacier got busted and sent this particular glob sediments which are lying there in front of you. So when you make a plan of harnessing the river water for power generation, which is of course a very clean form of energy, you must harness it. You must also keep in mind what happens there. What kind of planning and what kind of plan and strategy you have to combine this kind of thing. Now, okay. One of the questions which is really bothering everybody. Before I come here, I just wanted to show you. The 7th February flash flood originated from this river, which is called the Raunchi Ghat, a small ghat. Nothing came from this area. Nothing came from this area. Only a small tributary got activated. Now, we are all discussing and bothering about it that such a small area with having the Raunchi Glacier and the Nanda Gunti Glacier, those two glaciers joined together with the Ghat, how come so much of water is coming? What was the process responsible for so much of water? Of course, sediment is always there. So one of the cartoons which I have made from this is from the Fontaine and Wilder analysis of geophilic sighting published in 1998. So these are the temperate glaciers where water always exists with the snow. The process involves that when you have a snowfall, you get a firm ice, and you have got the ice at the bottom. Between these, you have got a. Can I go back? No.
I'll go back to that.
ये पीछे जा नहीं आगे जाना है पीछे
So this water, the junction of these two, the snow and the fern and the ice below is a water saturated layer. At times when you have got a crevasses, this water percolates down at the bottom, which through the subglacial conduits, and this is the bedrock. So then water flows from here, water is sitting over there. So this is one of the possibilities which has already been proposed by Dr. Kulkarni from the Vichya Center, not in this particular manner, but he said that he probably suspects that there was a sub-glacial lake which got punctured by the avalanche and debris which released the water. Looks sensible, but but this needs to be validated. As of today, our understanding is limited to this. I'm not saying this is completely solve the problem, but we are still really trying to understand this because this has opened up a new research area that small tributaries in the glaciated terrain can create such kind of disaster. So we must understand the processes, particularly the subglacial hydrology, which has not been addressed properly. So we must understand we should not be confining only to the proglacial lakes, the lakes which are in front of the glacier, and think about it and then try to understand the barrier, the what you call hydrostatic pressure build-up scenarios and things like that. There is a big, one of the most serious problems. Of course, we generate the glop, but glop can also be generated by this particular mechanism. I don't know whether we call it a glop or something else, but this is a mechanism suggested by this table, back in 1998. This is not. Second thing what we did is that we got the data from this source and plotted them. Now, the upper panel is a November, February year 1981 to 2000. This is the average data. Now, these are two things. One is insolation data, and this is the average of the surface temperature. This is the one we are showing, and this is the 2 meters above the ground. That's the blue dash line. What you see, normally, after February, the temperature starts to decrease. The normal thing, because we are entering into the autumn. Shooting up. This is one. Spring up. So, but this is the data for January 1, 2021 to 9 February 2021. What is interesting, you can see that if you see the blue line, this is the blue one, the air temperature above 2 meters ground, on 5th February onward, it starts shooting up. It goes up. And below, and you can see maximum time except one peak here, small one here, you can see it is always lower. So there is 2 degree plus increase in the temperature. So our hypothesis at the moment, the very working hypothesis, need to be really validated with real-time data from the site. We don't have real-time data, but the data which I have shown, according to this particular site, it is 85% accurate because they validate to the ground data. Small supraglacial lake deformed sediment and steep wall cavities in the adjacent zone. This has been observed by Google Images, of course. We have access to Google Images. As I said, temperate glacier partially saturated contains N-glacial aquifer between the firn and the impermeable ice, which I showed in the cartoon. We hypothesized that the large volume of water would have been generated by scavenging the N-glacial aquifer by snow and debris avalanche on the accumulation adjacent zone, which is very similar to what I've told continuously. But it's such a different manner. So this could be the reason. And what are the manifestations? Yeah. So this is a picture taken by Bhattacharya and Bisnoy. The Dhiri Dam project. This is from NTPC. Those project was started at the one. This is from the helicopter. So this is the valley. This is the glacier which is the combined glacier of Rishiganga, what you call Rontigar, which comes from Thrissur, and Nanda Devi, Nanda Gundi glacier. And this is the area from where the lunch probably was triggered because the current, so you can see a lot of dust and muddy stuff is there, and this comes down. You see the river up to this area, you can see up to this area, seems to be a glaciated valley, then it becomes a fluvial dominated system. And not that it happened only this year. When we look into 2017 image, we do find it in front of us now. It is a stream, Ronti Garden stream, same area. We can see the fine muddy material over there. Probably this kind of events are happening in this particular area quite frequently. But they were not having that kind of magnitude. There was no magnitude. So this is what we should be looking at into the different valleys. If this kind of evidence are there in the vicinity of the snouts, we must be careful about those particular glaciers, monitor them very seriously. Now, this is a picture. I must tell Naresh Rana really congratulated this guy. No helicopter, nothing. He walked through such a difficult terrain and brought down the first picture. This is a particular stream called Rontigar, which comes from that glacier, and this is a snow. It's taken on 9th. The picture is taken on 9th. So you can see still the snow is there. Imagine what was there between 2nd to 5th must have been quite thicker in this area. And this is Rishiganga coming like this. And this is Rontigar. See the water backflow and obstructed the Rishiganga because Rishiganga this part is in God. And there's another feature, you can see that this is Rishiganga completely chopped with the sediment from this particular valley. Now, just to see the rocket, the height is measured by him 20 to 30 meters. You can see here, and incision of the sediment after this 7th February, immediately you see it piled up to this level. It inside within 2 days, just swept it away. And this is the lake which is there now. This lake must have been shrunk in the volume because water started oozing out. It has to ooze out. The barrier was soft sediment, and they were inclining toward downstream. That's how it is. So the first devastation. So was this tragedy was natural? Certainly, it was natural, generated by natural causes. This is the road. This is the Rainy village. This is the first hydropower, Rainy hydropower, 13.5 megawatts, and this is the road which goes to Marathi. And this is the bridge which you might have seen in the video before the flood. This Narasana took it, and then after the flood, one shot, that everything goes. What I'm trying to emphasize that when when we make a planning in this particular area, we need to have a sensitivity and appreciation about the terrain response to extreme weather events. Not to talk about the extreme weather event, even to the normal weather events, we must know how the rivers are going to behave. What happens? The bridge was somewhere here. Now you can again see that this bridge, this road, this is our Rishiganga, and that is my Dhawali Ganga, and another barrage was down in there, Tapovan, that also wiped away. So this is okay. Okay. Fine. So this is now the landscape is this. You have got Dhawali, you have got the Rishiganga now here. The water system. I'm concluding now. I told you about 1894. That Iguana tragedy. No satellite, no cell phone, nothing. People could communicate, save the life. Today's warning system should go. This is near Vishnupad hydropower project barrage. What he tries. सर्वसाधारण को सूचित किया जाता है कि विष्णुपैड जल विद्युत परियोजनाओं के संचालन के अंतर्गत प्रॉब्लम आ सकती है, मशीन खराब पड़ सकती है, जिसके कारण अरविंदा में पानी का मात्रा बढ़ सकती है। ठीक है, 1 मीटर तक पानी बढ़ सकता है। अच्छा, आपसे अनुरोध किया जाता है कि आप और आपके जानवरों को लेकर नदी में ना जाए। इन्फिनिट राउंड द ईयर आपको दे दिया गया, सूचित कर दिया गया है। ठीक है ना, इसमें ये हमारा वार्निंग सिस्टम है। ये रन ऑफ द रिवर स्कीम के लिए, जहाँ पे बैराज बनाते हैं, डाइवर्जन टनल बनाते हैं। ये है टिहरी डैम के लिए, जहाँ रिजर्वायर होता है, वहाँ पे रिजर्वायर ड्रॉडाउन इफेक्ट होता है। व्हेन यू fill the reservoir, water goes up, and there is a column and the valley flank, water gets into the column. When the reservoir lower down, the water oozes out and that cripples the whole thing down. उसमें मकान भी टूट रहे हैं, बहुत सारी चीजें हो रही है। वहाँ जलाशय का स्तर बढ़ता और घटता रहता है, आगे की भूमि दलदली हो सकती है। कृपया स्वयं बच्चों और अपने मवेशियों को जलाशय प्रतिबंधन में इसे काट दिया, इससे जान माल की क्षति हो सकती है। हो गया, अगले वार्निंग सिस्टम इज डन। This is the most funny thing which I was crossing over to this Pangong को लेकर पास आता, मैं नाम भूल रहा हूँ, तांगलांग में जो पास है, ये बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग है लगा है बिकर का। Because of global warming, please beware, avalanche can come anytime, anywhere. This is the warning system we have got. So this is the slide which I always try to show to the people. I remember Rodar Bilam was giving a talk in PRL after the Muzaffarabad earthquake. In Muzaffarabad earthquake, a lot of people died, including the school was destroyed, where kids were killed. He said it's a great crime. The schools should be more safe because your next generation is there. The school buildings are the place where you go for the shelter during the time of calamity. Look at the school, July 2013 when the tragedy happened. In June 2013 I went there in July, still the water was flowing, was weak. There was a school. And if you carefully see, on the roof of the school, there is a sediment. It was Sunday, school, there was no kids. Therefore, nobody, not a single child died. After the leap over, now I would like you to have a look. Now the water front. Now you cannot imagine कि ये हुआ था जून में, ये आपको मैं दिसंबर 2013 में जाता हूँ. It becomes quite clean, nice. Now you see our stupidity. We are building a structure there. You see this. We are building a structure there now. Now see that the structure has come up in the March 2014. Then they have made a wall. 2016. We have got an entire system of disaster mitigation. We have got a law that from river, this much area should not be occupied. Everything is there. Scientists are always telling all these things. But when it comes to implementation, of course, now I can tell you the school is shifted now. I was there again in this year, in the month of January, then our school is abandoned now finally. But after so many constructions. So finally, sir, the disaster to begin with was indeed natural story, this is what I told you, but being amplified by human folly. If those obstructions were not on the way, probably death would have been that magnitude. And me, as a citizen, just standing and watching, thinking about what I'm going to give to the next generation. This is from Punjab Valley, when the landslide triggered and obstructed the Punjab River. There is a crying face of a kid because the bodies were taken out. Are we going to leave Himalaya for this kind of faces? Or this is from Jharkhand area, or we want to put them in a smiley face? Choice is ours. So I end it here now. We will not go to the roads. So this is what I wanted to convey and discuss in front of you. That एक last बात है, हिमालय हर एक का साहस की कदर करता है, पर दूसरा की कदर नहीं करता. मेरा मानना है, personally I feel that we are really doing adventurism at some time in the Himalaya. If we keep doing it, I think with the kind of situation prevailing globally under the climate change, these kind of incidents are going to get amplified. So be better careful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody wants to ask a question? No, thank you.
Hello.
Vivesh, can you listen to me?
Yes, we can hear you, Dr. Nawaz. If you have any queries or questions with Dr. Naveen Jwal, you can all ask one by one. You can.
Naveen sir. Naveen sir.
हाँ बोलो.
हाँ, एक्चुअली जो आप ऋषि गंगा वाला एपिसोड जो हुआ है, इसका जो बेसिक कॉज है, आप कह रहे हैं कि जो हैंगिंग ग्लेशियर था उसका ब्रेक ऑफ था. ठीक है. लेकिन जब हमने उस हैंगिंग ग्लेशियर का जितना पार्ट वहां से ब्रेक ऑफ हुआ उसका एरिया कैलकुलेट किया, इट इज अराउंड 0.3 स्क्वायर किलोमीटर्स. ओके, बट द फ्लैश फ्लड दैट वाज क्रिएटेड बाय दिस इवेंट, it needs a lot of water supply to create such an event. So 0.3 square kilometers does not have that much of an-glacial water that can create such an havoc. Okay, so what could have been the source of water that has created the flash flood?
Nawaz, if you look at the glacier length, Ronti Glacier and the Nanda Gumti Glacier, Ronti Glacier is something like 6 to 7 kilometer long glacier from the headwater to terminus, and the Nanda Gumti is something like 4 kilometer plus. So it's not a small glacier. What we are trying to propose is that it's not the breaking of the ice which really generated the water. Even if you break the ice and remove that particular slide, avalanche ice cannot be melted immediately after it falls down. It cannot generate water, not at all.
Yes.
It's a great response of the melting. What we are trying to suggest that there was the firm ice, because fresh snow was there, or always firm ice has to be there on top of the ice. Between the firm ice and the firm snow and the ice, there is an engaged water. Then there is a water which is below. Thickness of this particular glacier is not very large. I don't have any estimate, but by looking into the Google image,
It is
So
40.
it's very less. So if you collapse something on top of it, by in the form of avalanche, it's not on the ice, but the debris also, it is possible to break that particular, puncture that particular layer and release the water. As the water comes out, it has got a higher temperature compared to the snow. It will keep pushing the snow, breaking it out and generating the water. Now water is not one shot event. It was obstructed on its way down till the Rishi Ganga because the river has got a heat god kind of situation. So when you impound the water at different locations, you generate a kind of a process which we call force amplifier. So it was a cumulative and cascading effect that eventually led to this disaster.
Okay, is it possible that when the avalanche happened, that it created a small dam first, then that breached and started the process?
No. Avalanche, even if you put an avalanche ice in front of the snout, the discharge is so low that it won't be really able to create such a huge reservoir. Instantaneously generate the flood. Impossible. I don't think so. But what I'm saying, Nawaz, it is not the conclusive evidence. Conclusive evidence is in inference of ours. It is the working hypothesis need to be really validated. Unless or until we really get into the area or to the similar area, we will be speculating. And this is at the moment, I will put it at a speculating stage.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Anybody else who would like to ask a question? Is there anyone who would like to ask any queries or anything? Do you have any queries for Dr. Naveen Jha? So if there are none, you can obviously share your queries with him over email or telephone later on. And I'd like to thank Dr. Jual for delivering a very informative and interesting lecture, Dr. Jual, and sensitizing the young minds. And sensitizing the young minds on the importance of Himalayan glaciers. May I now request Dr. Santosh Shah, Convener Scientific Events Coordination Committee, to provide some additional information on the lecture series and life of Dr. M.N. Bose.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm here to give a brief information about the late Dr. M.N. Bose. Dr. Mahendranath Bose was born on 3rd March in the year 1925. He did his BSc, MSc and PhD from the University of Lucknow. And after MSc, he joined research under Professor Birbal Sahni, FRS, as a personal assistant, research assistant. He went to Reading, England to work under the supervision of Professor T.M. Harris, FRS, and then to Stockholm to work under Professor Olaf Frelling in Rishikesh Museum, Naturhistoriska, and finally to Oslo to work on fossil plant from Gyre under the supervision of Professor Orvo Hoff. He became the director of the BSIP in 1985. Among the academic and research achievement, Dr. Bose's major contribution was on the Mesozoic paleobotany of India and Paleozoic paleobotany of Gyre. He worked on the Lower Cretaceous plants of Arctic regions, and he also made significant contribution on fossils related to cocoons. And the other contribution include, actually after retirement in 1985, Dr. Bose went to Geology Institute of Oslo, and for 5 years he worked on different kind of leaves like skydog studies from the Arctic region, fossil plant from India, Norway, and some cocoons study, and also wrote a paper in Paleozoic Mesozoic plants from India and Antarctica both. He was a member of Great North Windcast Academy 1987 and honorary corresponding member of Académie Royale des Sciences d'Outre-mer He served as member of editor board of several journals like our Paleobotanist, Geophytologist, and Paleontographica. Among the awards and honors, he received several awards and honors. That doctor was received were Ruchiram Sahni Award in 1952, the Paleobotanical Society International Medal in 1998, and Sahni Centenary Medal in 1998. He was a fellow of Indian Academy of Sciences, Bangalore in 1982, and the Paleobotanical Society in 1997. He breathed his last on 27th of April 2011, which was a great loss to the scientific community and his family, friends, and colleagues. So on his honor, as who was the eminent paleobotanist of India, we at B.R. Vasan Institute of Paleosciences started a memorial lecture from 2015, and so today you heard Dr. Jual for an interesting talk on glacial activities in the Himalayan region. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Shah. Commencing with the present program, I now request Dr. Santosh Kumar Pandey, member Scientific Events Coordination Committee of BSIP, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Vesh. After having an informative talk, in fact, really a great practical discussion by Dr. Jual, I have a very pleasant duty here. I'm here to propose a vote of thanks on successful completion of today's function. On behalf of the Director, B.R. Vasan Institute of Paleosciences, Dr. Vandana Prasad, and Scientific Event Coordination Committee, and my own, we're thankful to staff members of the Institute for online celebrating and memorizing 97th birth anniversary of renowned paleobotanist, late Dr. M.N. Bose. We are grateful to the speaker, Dr. Naveen Jual of the Physical Research Laboratory, Ahmedabad, for delivering the 7th Dr. M.N. Bose Memorial Lecture. Thank you, sir. We are grateful to the RAC chairman and members for their presence here off and online during this event. Any function could not be successful without support of various authorities of the Institute, and we acknowledge the support of computer auditorium, staff, welfare, garden, photography, WNB, website committee for successfully organizing this event. We are also thankful to the Registrar, Mr. Sandeep Kumar Shivhare, and administrative staff members for providing support to organize this event. Once again, on my behalf, I am thankful to all of you for your presence in 97th birth anniversary celebration of the late Dr. M.N. Bose. Additionally, I would like to inform all of you that the YouTube link for today's event will also be shared with you via email in a day or two. Thank you so much.